Meet Hamilton, the manatee. Despite his wrinkles, these are still just pictures of baby Hamilton. Hamilton lives in a place where others like to go on vacation, Florida's west coast. He commutes between the Gulf of Mexico and the inland rivers. The fact that he has an official name indicates that he's had his share of bad luck. Only manatees with a dramatic life story are given a name. His habitat looks like a paradise, but surviving here isn't all that easy. In western Florida, it's hard to say where the ocean ends and the rivers begin. The ebb and flow of the tides have created a flowing landscape here in which everything merges together. This is home to a great number of animal species. The largest among them is also the most gentle. They're called West Indian manatees, also known as sea cows. Hamilton's story begins in the murky waters of the tidal current, long before his birth. Manatees have to eat 1/10 of their body weight every day. Sometimes that takes up to 60 kilos of plants, which can take them almost all day. This female doesn't know that today her life will change forever. Scientists have marked this male. They also gave H9 a real name, Muddy Baron. Muddy Baron is in high spirits. But it's not only Muddy Baron in spring fever, he's joined by some of the other males. They follow Hamilton's mother-to-be, who is not particularly enamored by the attention of her followers. The males compete for her attention in typical manatee manner. Lots of pushing and shoving, almost in slow motion. But it's also hard work. The mating ritual can last up to 2 weeks. The female will only choose her partner when there is more than one male to court her. It's the testosterone in the water that triggers her. And it seems that Muddy Baron is the lucky one. Mating itself can take hours. It's a game of skill for both partners. With bodies weighing up to 600 kilograms, the whole operation has to be maneuvered very precisely. After mating successfully, the pregnancy can last up to 14 months. During this time, the mother-to-be disappears in the Gulf of Mexico. The water is warm here and there is plenty of food. Instead of traveling long distances, she tends to stay in the same area. Her home is the section of sea between the coast and mangrove islands. The mangroves are a true blessing for the tropical coasts. Few habitats provide food and shelter to so many different species of animals. Along with coral reefs and rainforests, they are among the most important ecosystems on the planet. The roots of the mangroves form a dense, intertwined labyrinth underwater. Even during hurricanes, the roots stay anchored in the ground and protect the mainland from the wind and the waves. Countless species of fish live here, including the mangrove snapper. It's also an ideal nursery ground. The upper floor is the kingdom of the birds. Pelicans, cormorants, grey herons, and numerous others nest here. The unprecedented abundance of fish in the Gulf of Mexico makes it an attractive breeding ground for millions of birds. During low tide, thousands of small sand balls cover the beach. They come from the fiddler crab. Even though they're very small, they play a huge role in the mangroves. They suck their food out of the sand, algae, fungus, and microbes, and then they form small bowls from the clean sand. Without this mass of fiddler crabs, the mangroves would be smelling more like a musty death zone. It's their minute size that makes them hesitant. When they notice a movement, they beat a hasty retreat. There is always lots going on at the beach, so the fiddler crabs lead a very busy life. White pelicans are winter guests along Florida's coast. They spend the summer in Canada. They hunt encircling schools of fish and then scoop their prey from the water with their beaks. hunting technique of brown pelicans is far more spectacular. They home in on individual prey, captured in a daredevil display of diving. More than a year has passed since the mating dance among the mangroves. Many manatees seek out parts of the river that have been sectioned off from boats and swimmers. Hamilton's mother has also come here to rest. Her pregnancy has turned her into a balloon with flippers. And if you take a close look, you can see Hamilton moving around inside her. He certainly seems to have more energy than his mother. Manatees are often considered to be cumbersome and sluggish, but by comparison, Hamilton's mother is practically moving in slow motion. No manatee in the wild has ever allowed anyone to witness the moment of birth, and Hamilton too is born at a place and time away from our cameras. Then one fine day, the mother finally has someone at her side. The manatee guardians will later call this little fellow Hamilton. Like all babies, he's cautious, but also curious. He looks into the camera somewhat suspiciously. But after a while, curiosity gets the better of him. His mother thinks that's all a bit too much. She instinctively wants to protect him. Now, at the beginning of November, a great adventure lies ahead. They'll make their way to one of Florida's natural treasures. Deep underground, there is a huge and very old natural freshwater reservoir. With great pressure, millions of litres of precious drinking water shoot up from the springs every day. In the hot spring areas, the water is an even 23 degrees Celsius all year round. Entire rivers source through here. This freshwater depot beneath Florida belongs to one of the largest in the world. One of the most famous freshwater sources are the Three Sisters Springs in Florida's Crystal River. There are, quite literally, 3 spring areas, hence the name. The natural springs are home to many animals. At once, the amount of fish here is astonishing. They can find an abundance of food because of the nutritious water. But they are not safe from their hunters here. The anhinga, or snakebird, is a frequent visitor. With its abilities to stay underwater for long periods and move at speed, it's an extremely accomplished hunter. Hardly a dive ends without success. Snapping turtles like these young are usually well hidden, but this spring offers neither thick vegetation nor mud, so it seeks shelter in a cave. However, it should be careful in its selection of cave. On their quest for roots, manatees have dug caves into the riverbank. Some of them now have new inhabitants. Alligators are common in Florida's waterways. Every 20 minutes they swim up to the surface for air, but they usually don't stay for long. Despite their infamy, they're easily frightened. Manatees come here every winter. They're very sensitive to temperature and die in cold water. When the Gulf of Mexico drops below 23 degrees, the hot springs become their refuge. Hamilton has also survived the long, hard journey. His mother led the way, guided by an astounding sense of direction and her finely tuned receptors for the heat and flow of the currents. Before her, her mother came here. The knowledge is passed down the generations. Swimming against the current is exhausting for Hamilton. No wonder he's hungry. Manatees' teats are located near their armpits. But right now, Hamilton's mother has other things on her mind. First, she'd like to find somewhere a bit quieter to rest. They're not alone at the Three Sisters Springs. More than 600 manatees have made their way to the area this year. They're worn out from the long journey, some of them suffering from the stress of the cold. Hamilton and his mother have finally found a nice place to rest. Now it's time to sleep and recharge the batteries. The temperature here is a life-saving heat. Though sea cows look fat, they don't have any insulating blubber. so they can easily freeze under their thin layer of skin. Even worse, when it's cold, they get something akin to freeze burn. Cold water can kill them. In some years, hundreds at a time. If they survive the cold, there is another problem to solve. The spring's environment does not offer enough food for all the manatees. This manatee nibbles on weed that it can only reach during high tide. Some manatees are true gourmets. This one drinks fresh water straight from the spring. Part of the R&R program for manatees at Three Sisters Springs is a little peeling session. Sunfish have set up a cleaning station in one corner of the inlet. They remove parasites, algae and barnacles from the manatee's skin. Afterwards, the riverbed is full of dead barnacles. While the mothers sleep, their offspring can get a little bored. This young male calf is a real teenager. He hardly knows what to do with all his strength. If he can't manage to knock over a tree trunk, maybe he'll try out his prowess on his mother. He exhibits another typical sign of a full-blooded teenager, a budding interest in the opposite sex. Apparently, some part of his mother's body give off a particularly enticing aroma. Escape, it seems, is fruitless. The teen calf stays hot on his mother's trail. With the infinite patience of any manatee mother, the female tolerates her son's inquisitive impulses. Then within seconds, he reverts into a small baby who's hungry and just wants to drink some milk. Of course, such a warming paradise like the Three Sisters Springs doesn't only attract manatees in the winter. Year after year, the animals themselves draw in tourists. Crystal River is an absolute exception. Nowhere else in the world can people experience such a protected species so close up. Hamilton has just woken up. And what would any well-mannered manatee do right after sleeping? Brush his teeth, of course. It's always handy to have a bearded snorkeler nearby. cordoned-off area is reserved exclusively for manatees. Back here, they can enjoy the heat bubbling from the springs undisturbed. Interesting. There's another sea cow up there. And one that disappears if you give it a nudge. How strange. It's a good thing there are some other real ones around to play with. Approximately 250,000 visitors come from around the world here every year to swim with the manatees. Volunteers help keep watch that no one goes into the protected areas. The manatees know that they can find peace and quiet behind the buoy lines. They sleep crowded together, out of range of the snorkelers. Unfortunately, many swimmers fail to show a bit more respect. This father wakes up a sleeping manatee by petting it. Even when they're trying to find a piece of quiet, some people can't refrain from their uninvited attention. Hamilton and his mother have trouble avoiding the teeming tourists. Some manatees like having contact with humans. Those who don't are groped and followed nonetheless. The volunteer sanctuary guards can't be everywhere at once. Without realizing it, this snorkeler makes Hamilton go into an audible panic. When trying to escape his pursuers, Hamilton experiences the worst thing possible for a manatee baby. He becomes separated from his mother. But she responds as calmly as ever and moves to comfort her frightened baby. Now the swimmer gets ready to dive, but Hamilton just wants to get away. The two make their escape from the springs in a hurry. But that's not such a good idea. The region around Crystal River is a paradise for fishers. Manatees like to use anchoring ropes as dental floss. Calves especially like to chew on it when they're teething. This leaves them open to the risk of swallowing fishing hooks. Besides that, thousands of manatees have already been killed or injured by the propellers of motorboat engines. A narrow escape. Fleeing from the snorkelers has taken Hamilton and his mother into dangerous territory. Boat owners know that manatees live around here, but still. A few days later, Hamilton and his mother show up again. At first glance, they both appear to be unharmed, but then comes the shocking truth. Hamilton was obviously hit by a boat. There are clear marks where the propeller blades have cut into his flesh. There's no way of knowing it yet, but these are the last pictures of Hamilton with his mother. A few days later, in a residential area near the water, a local resident discovers a dead manatee in a small bay. It's Hamilton's mother. What happened? Had she been injured along with Hamilton, or was there another accident? Nobody knows for sure. Employees of the Fish and Wildlife Service come to remove the dead animal. Manatees are deaf to the warnings of boat engines, and some recreational boaters take it in stride if they kill a manatee every now and then. Now Hamilton has to get by on his own. Hungrier than ever before in his life, he tries to suckle from other mothers. However, not all are so obliging. Hamilton's fate doesn't go unnoticed. Mike Dunn, a volunteer manatee rescuer, has been watching the orphaned calf for a while now. Sometimes orphans can fend for themselves quite well, but perhaps Hamilton has internal injuries. The experts from the Fish and Wildlife Service decide to take him out of the water. Their plan is to separate Hamilton from the other manatees so they can catch him with a net. But the manatees now show that they are neither slow nor stupid. Hamilton stays close to another manatee. When they sense the alien object, they quickly flee. Too fast for Hamilton. He's separated from the others. Now the men have to maneuver him into the net.
All right. Ready, bag it, bag it. Bag it, bag it, bag it. Excellent job. All right, bag it. Okay, let's keep her in the water a little bit, guys. Keep her in the water.
He offers hardly any resistance. On land, manatees usually give up all resistance. Accepting his fate, Hamilton allows them to undertake his first examination.
So they're bringing the truck around in reverse.
They're bringing the truck around. They had to move the trailer.
Moving here for a second. Good job, guys. Nice catch. Yes, you got whacked.
His fresh wounds are cause for concern. They could easily get infected. And no one knows whether the collision with the boat might have broken some of his ribs. Hamilton has already had quite enough. However, it's a blessing in disguise. From now on, he only encounters people trying to help him.
Watch out for her jaw. Make sure that jaw's not cracked open.
It's not. She's all right. Oh.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
Not too much.
A splash of water triggers his breathing reflex.
She's not going to breathe that quick. Just hang on.
Is the unfamiliar air making his eyes water? Or can manatees shed tears? He'd certainly have good reason to cry.
67.5.
Hamilton is too small and too young to survive on his own. He'll have to be taken to the Manatee Hospital.
Watch out. Watch her. She's so light.
Watch your feet.
Yeah, watch yourself, guys. No, but we got to move those pants.
I've got one.
Every year, dozens of manatees have to go through the same procedure. That is, if they're lucky and don't die before they're rescued.
We're going to stop at Chaz, too.
The first car ride in his life takes Hamilton to the Manatee Hospital of Lowry Park Zoo in Tampa. He will already be grown up when he leaves the hospital. On Florida's Gulf Coast, life goes on as if nothing had happened. Life's everyday dramas continue, both big and small. Water spouts in the distance. What's going on over there? The bottlenose dolphins here have developed some very special feeding tactics. Despite putting themselves at risk of becoming stranded in the very shallow waters. If they can't find any fish in the water, the dolphins scare them out of their hiding places in the marsh grasses. Too bad. None of the fish are falling for the trick today. But the dolphins have refined a good backup plan. A splash of the tail fin is the starting signal. The dolphins use the escape instincts of their prey against them. Mullets instinctively jump out of the water in panic, and that's precisely what the dolphins were counting on. Here it is again in slow motion. First, a dolphin swims in a circle, stirring up a cloud of silt and air bubbles that creates an impenetrable barrier for the fish. One of the dolphins darts into the surrounded school of fish, sparking up panic. Now, they just have to improve their catching skills. No luck. Time to let off some steam on a weaker colleague. the next attempt. With powerful strokes, a dolphin swims around the school of mullets, encircling them. The mullets panic. Again, no catch. The pelicans know how skilled the dolphins are, and they want a slice of the fish pie. The dolphins are out of luck today, but one of 3 pelicans will have had enough to eat. That's why the dolphins aren't particularly impressed with them. A sore loser lets out his frustration on one of his more successful comrades. While the pelicans are quarreling, the dolphins finally meet with a little more success. The mullets in Three Sisters Springs lead a much less dangerous life. Here the manatee season is drawing to an end. The cold winter is almost over, and many of the manatees have already returned to the Gulf of Mexico. In February, the weather starts to warm up. Some manatees remain. Now at the source of the Three Sisters Springs, there will be a new kid on the block. Two years have passed since Hamilton was rescued from the springs. Today, he's coming back. The Sea to Shore Alliance Conservation Organization has attached a satellite transmitter to him. They'll track his movements for a year. This once little baby has become a big, strong sea cow. He hasn't lost any of his feistiness and resists as best as he can. The floor of the basin where he was treated was lifted. Hamilton now lies in shallow water so that his keepers can maneuver him onto the stretcher. Once again, Hamilton is fed up. One and a half hours later, he can smell the freedom. The hired truck takes Hamilton to his old stomping grounds. Three Sisters Springs. Hamilton still doesn't know what's happening to him. He just wants to get out of here. At first, he swims hesitantly into freedom, slightly irritated by the amount of space. But then he makes an incredible discovery. Unlike in the rehabilitation tank, here he can keep swimming straight ahead for a long time. He's oblivious to his strange tracking device, which for others is a little cumbersome. Then he makes another amazing discovery. His new old home is full of other manatees. What looks like a happy reunion among old friends could also be something else. Manatees are always willing to form a spontaneous mating herd. But one thing's for certain. Hamilton appears to be enjoying his newfound freedom. Overnight, Hamilton disappears without a trace. It takes a whole year before he reappears, looking robust and covered in algae. After all his painful experiences, Hamilton tries to avoid people, as much as that's possible in Crystal River. His transmitter also bears the ravages of time, but the conservationists will remove it entirely in a few weeks. Will he ever be found again without the satellite system? He prefers to stay hidden in the murky depths of the Gulf of Mexico. Two years after Hamilton's release into the wild, disaster strikes. Invisible poisonous algae multiply rampantly in the Gulf of Mexico. Known as Karenia brevis or red tide, the deadly algae settles right on the plants that sea cows like to eat. For the animals, there's no escaping death. They have no defenses against the toxic algae and succumb helplessly. That year they die in their hundreds, more than ever before. And what about Hamilton? How has he fared? Hamilton, who has gone through so much in his short life. It's another cold winter in Three Sisters Springs. As always, the manatees warm up around the spring. Will Hamilton be here as well? He is, and has survived the toxic algal bloom. Maybe the tides have turned for him, and after all those years of misfortune and pain, perhaps fate has a bit of luck in store for him. He has certainly earned it.